Philip II of Macedon, the king who spent nearly 20 years at war, first against the Greek city-states, then against neighboring tribes, turned Macedonia from a minor state into the most dominant power in Greece. After defeating Athens and Thebes at the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip formed the League of Corinth, uniting most of Greece under his leadership in preparation for a campaign against Persia. At the height of his power, during a public celebration, he was assassinated by one of his bodyguards and former lovers, Pausanias of Orestis. Pausanias was immediately killed by 3 Macedonians who were close to Philip's son, Alexander. His motive remains unclear, probably a personal vendetta, and even Philip's widow Olympias was suspected to be involved. After the assassination, Philip's son took the throne at age 20 and launched the conquests that made him known as Alexander the Great. However, the military system, political structure and resources that enabled his success were all built by his father. Alexander dismantled the Persian Empire and launched the Hellenistic era. Greek became the dominant language of the Eastern Mediterranean and later the Roman Empire. When Rome conquered the region, it inherited Greek culture, politics and language. By the time of Jesus, Greek was the common written language, allowing the message of Christianity to spread rapidly. Julius Caesar was a statesman and general who led the Romans to victory in the Gallic Wars. His rise was marked by years of military conquests that made him the richest man in Rome. After defeating his rival Pompey the Great in a brutal civil war, his power peaked. In 44 BC, he was declared dictator for life, alarming many who feared monarchy's return. A group of senators led by Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus conspired to assassinate him. Brutus had been close to Caesar and personally pardoned by him, making his betrayal striking. Their plan came to action during a Senate meeting, where Caesar was ambushed by around 60 conspirators and stabbed 23 times. Only one wound was fatal. Though the assassination succeeded, it failed in its purpose. Caesar's popularity had been severely underestimated. Rome erupted in panic, and Marcus Antonius's funeral speech ignited public outrage. Civil wars followed, Brutus took his own life, and instead of restoring the Republic, the event hastened its end. The office of emperor emerged from the chaos, cementing one-man rule. Caesar's death became a turning point in Roman history. Brutus, torn between loyalty and duty, has remained a divisive figure, viewed as both a noble defender of the Republic and a traitor condemned to the deepest layer of hell by Dante. Alexander II ruled as Emperor of Russia, King of Poland and Grand Duke of Finland. He freed millions of peasants from being tied to landowners, earning him the title Alexander the Liberator. He also overhauled the judicial system, abolished corporal punishment, expanded local self-government, promoted education, and reduced noble privileges. In foreign policy, he leaned toward peace. He sold Alaska to the US in 1867 to avoid losing it to Britain in a future war, and joined Germany and Austria in the League of the Three Emperors in 1872 to stabilize Europe. Despite his reforms, Alexander's rule grew more repressive after a failed assassination attempt in 1866. By the late 1870s, radical pressures were rising, leading to the emergence of the People's Will, a revolutionary group that targeted Alexander with repeated attacks. In March 1881, a bomb was thrown at the Tsar's carriage in St. Petersburg that led to his death. That same morning, he had signed a constitution that would have created an elected parliament. His death brought all such plans to a halt. His successor, Alexander III, rejected the constitution and launched reactionary policies, increasing repression through the secret police Ochrana and reversing liberal progress. His assassination fueled revolutionary momentum, paving the way for the Russian Revolution in 1917 and Russia's shift to communism. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. He led the country through the Civil War, defeated the Confederacy, and played a key role in ending slavery. On April 14, 1865, Lincoln attended a performance at Ford's Theater that evening. During the play, John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor and supporter of the Confederacy, entered the presidential box, shot Lincoln in the back of the head, and fled the scene. Booth saw Lincoln as a tyrant and believed killing him would revive the Southern cause. The assassination happened just as Lincoln was working to pass an amendment to end slavery and reshape the nation after the war. Lincoln's death had major consequences. His successor, Andrew Johnson, sympathized with the South and rolled back many of Lincoln's Reconstruction efforts. His death deepened national division, fueling long-term racial tensions. Lincoln was the first US president to be assassinated, and by coincidence, he had signed the legislation creating the Secret Service on the same day he was shot. The Secret Service would later become the agency responsible for protecting future presidents. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. In June 1914, he and his wife were assassinated in Sarajevo by a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb linked to separatist groups like Young Bosnia and the Black Hand, which aimed to break southern Slavic provinces away from Austro-Hungarian rule. The plot involved 7 conspirators, armed with bombs and pistols. An earlier attempt failed when a bomb bounced off of the Archduke's car and injured bystanders. The plot seemed to collapse, but a wrong turn by the driver brought Franz Ferdinand directly in front of Gavrilo Princip, who took out both the Archduke and his wife at close range. The assassination triggered the July Crisis, collapsing diplomacy between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. Austria declared war, pulling Germany and Russia in through alliance commitments. Within weeks, much of Europe was at war. The war led to millions of deaths, and eventually to the Treaty of Versailles, which placed heavy penalties on Germany and planted the seeds for World War II. Ernst Röhm was a top Nazi and longtime ally of Hitler, leading the Sturmabteilung, or Brown Shirts, a massive paramilitary force that helped Hitler rise to power. Röhm pushed for a second revolution to nationalize land and industry, which alarmed Hitler's industrial backers. He also wanted to replace the regular army with his SA forces, a move that made him a threat to both the military and Hitler's corporate supporters. To eliminate this threat and secure the army's loyalty, Hitler ordered a purge. Between June and July 1934, the SS under Himmler executed over 900 SA leaders in what became known as the Night of the Long Knives. Röhm was arrested and later shot. Hitler justified the purge as necessary to stop a supposed coup, calling it self-defense by the state. Propaganda labeled it the Röhm-Putsch, and the German public was told the SA had plotted treason. With Röhm and the SA neutralized, Hitler rewarded the SS by making them independent and eventually placing all police forces under Himmler. The SA lost all influence, opposition was crushed, and Hitler faced no more resistance from within his party. Röhm's assassination emboldened Nazi aggression globally, cleared Hitler's path to full control, and set the stage for his dictatorship and World War II. Reinhardt Hydri was one of the most powerful figures in Nazi Germany and a key architect of the Holocaust. Known as the Butcher of Prague, Heydrich led the Gestapo, criminal police and SS intelligence wing, and chaired the Wannsee Conference, where he planned the genocide of Europe's Jews. He ruled the occupied Czech territories with brutality, enforcing forced labor and widespread executions. His assassination in 1942 came after months of preparation by 2 Czech operatives trained by the British. They ambushed his car in Prague using a grenade, fatally injuring him. Heydrich died 8 days later. The Nazi response was brutal. The village of Lidice was wiped out, its men and boys executed, and mass purges and arrests followed, claiming thousands of lives. Heydrich's assassination also sped up the Wannsee Conference policies he led, with Operation Reinhardt, named in his honor, launching the first 2 death camps at Treblinka, Sobibor and Belzec. The assassination marked a major psychological blow to the Nazi regime, disrupted SS operations temporarily, and proved that even Hitler's inner circle could be reached. It also led Britain and France to cancel the Munich Agreement, affirming that Czechoslovakia would be restored after the war. Mahatma Gandhi was an Indian independence leader who used non-violent resistance to help end British rule in India. He became a global symbol of peaceful protest, inspiring movements for civil rights around the world. In January 1948, just months after India gained independence, Gandhi was assassinated during an evening prayer in Delhi by his former follower Nathuram Godse, a Hindu nationalist who opposed Gandhi's efforts to promote unity between Hindus and Muslims. He believed Gandhi had betrayed Hindu interests and shot him 3 times at close range. Gandhi's death sparked national mourning and unrest, but also reignited tensions between Hindus and Muslims after India was divided and Pakistan was created, fueling more violence. Godse was later executed for his crime, but Gandhi's legacy lived on. His philosophy of nonviolence influenced leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela, and continues to shape peace and justice movements around the world. Patrice Lumumba was the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and a leading voice for African independence and anti-colonialism. He played a key role in freeing the Congo from Belgian rule in 1960, but only months after independence, the country descended into chaos. A military mutiny, foreign interference, and internal power struggles erupted into the Congo crisis. Lumumba, seen by the West as leaning toward the Soviet Union, was overthrown in a coup backed by rival Joseph Mobutu with help from Belgium and the CIA. Captured while trying to join his supporters, Lumumba was handed over to separatists in Katanga, where he was tormented and executed by Belgian and CIA-backed forces. His assassination plunged Congo into decades of dictatorship under Mobutu and fueled anti-Western sentiment in Africa. Globally, it sparked outrage and made Lumumba a martyr of the Pan-African movement and independence. John F. Kennedy served during some of the most critical moments of the Cold War. His presidency oversaw events such as the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and an increasing American military presence in Vietnam. On November 22, 1963, while riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, Kennedy was assassinated. Officially, the shooter was Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine who had previously defected to the Soviet Union before returning to the US. He was captured shortly after the murder of a police officer and later shot by nightclub owner Jack Ruby before he could stand trial. The Warren Commission concluded that Oswald acted alone, firing from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. However, this has been widely disputed. Questions over the trajectory of the bullets and the infamous single bullet theory to suspicions surrounding Oswald's background arose. Theories about multiple shooters have come up, with some proposing the direct involvement of the CIA, FBI, the American Mafia, the KGB, Fidel Castro, or even Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy's reluctance to escalate the war in Vietnam, his refusal to greenlight CIA-backed operations like Operation Northwoods, and his effort to ease Cold War tensions made him a controversial figure among the US establishment. In the aftermath, his successor Lyndon B. Johnson pushed through landmark legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, reforms many believe gained momentum from national mourning. Kennedy's assassination marked a turning point, leading people to question the truthfulness of the government. It also escalated US-Vietnam involvement under Johnson. Martin Luther King Jr. was the most prominent voice of the American civil rights movement, using nonviolent resistance to confront racism. From leading the Montgomery bus boycott to the March on Washington, where he delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, King became a symbol in the fight for racial equality. He advocated for voting rights, desegregation, labor justice, and an end to systemic poverty, later extending his activism into opposition to the Vietnam War. Despite his peaceful message, King was seen as a threat by the establishment. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover labeled him a radical and put him under heavy surveillance under the COINTEL program, even going so far as to urge him to take his own life. On April 4, 1968, while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, King was shot and killed by a single bullet. James Earl Ray, an escaped convict, was arrested and pleaded guilty to the assassination, but Ray quickly recanted, claiming coercion and later alleging he had been manipulated as part of a broader plot. The King family publicly rejected the lone gunman theory, believing that the murder was part of a wider conspiracy involving the US government. King's assassination sparked nationwide riots, but also accelerated the passage of the Civil Rights Act. His legacy shaped movements from South Africa's anti-apartheid struggle to Northern Ireland's civil rights campaign. Indira Gandhi, India's first and only female prime minister, was a polarizing figure who dominated Indian politics for nearly 2 decades. Known for her decisive leadership and centralization of power, she guided India through events like the 1971 war with Pakistan that led to the creation of Bangladesh, India's first successful nuclear test, and the 1971 treaty with the Soviet Union that deepened Cold War alliances. She was also responsible for Operation Meghdoot in Kashmir, asserting Indian control over strategic terrain. Her legacy is marked by the 1975-77 emergency, during which she ruled by decree, suspended civil liberties, and jailed over 100,000 political opponents and journalists. In 1984, facing escalating Sikh separatism, Gandhi ordered Operation Blue Star, sending troops into the Golden Temple, Sikhism's holiest site, to root out militants. The operation caused immense bloodshed and ignited outrage in the Sikh community. In October 1984, she was assassinated in retaliation by 2 of her Sikh bodyguards. Her death immediately triggered violent anti-Sikh riots across India, killing thousands and pushing the Punjab region into years of insurgency and unrest. Internationally, her death weakened India's grip on regional influence during the Cold War. She's admired by many as Mother Indira for her strong-willed governance and criticized by others for authoritarianism and cult-like leadership. Anir Sadat was the 3rd president of Egypt. He rose to power after Gamal Nasser's death in 1970 and quickly began dismantling his socialist and pan-Arab policies. He reintroduced multi-party politics, initiated a pro-market economy, and aligned Egypt more closely with the West. In 1973, he launched the Yom Kippur War against Israel to reclaim the Sinai Peninsula. The war ended in military stalemate, but restored Arab morale and positioned Sadat as a hero. Later, Egypt became the first Arab nation to recognize Israel, earning Sadat the Nobel Peace Prize. But Sadat's move enraged the Arab world, leading to Egypt's suspension from the Arab League. Domestically, Islamists and leftists viewed the peace as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause. The backlash intensified as Sadat cracked down on dissent and maintained controversial ties with the US. In October 1981, during a military parade commemorating the Yom Kippur War, Sadat was assassinated by members of Egyptian Islamic Jihad. The shooters, led by Khalid al-Islambouli, targeted him for his peace treaty with Israel and ties with the West. Other theories have accused Egyptian generals and foreign actors like the US and Israel. Sadat's assassination marked a turning point for the Middle East. It disrupted momentum for peace, fueled the rise of Islamist extremism, and ushered in Hosni Mubarak's authoritarian era in Egypt. Yitzhak Rabin was the 5th Prime Minister of Israel and former military chief. As Prime Minister during the 90s, Rabin became the architect of the Oslo Accords, a groundbreaking agreement with Yasser Arafat and the Palestine Liberation Organization that recognized mutual legitimacy and aimed for a peaceful 2-state solution. The accords earned Rabin, Arafat, and Shimon Peres the 1994 Nobel Peace Prize. That same year, Rabin signed a peace treaty with Jordan, further stabilizing Israel's regional standing. However, these efforts made him a target of intense domestic opposition. Right-wing politicians, including then opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu, and religious leaders denounced the Oslo Accords as a betrayal of Jewish claims to the land. He was compared to a Nazi and labeled a traitor, perceived as endangering Jewish lives. In November 1995, following a peace rally in Tel Aviv, Rabin was assassinated by Yigal Amir, an Israeli law student and right-wing ultra-nationalist who believed the prime minister's concessions endangered Israel's future. The assassination shocked the world and marked the collapse of the Oslo peace process. It hardened Israeli attitudes toward peace negotiations and shifted the nation's politics to the right, with long-term consequences still felt today. Globally, Rabin became a symbol of the fragile hopes for Israeli-Palestinian peace. Benazir Bhutto was the 11th Prime Minister of Pakistan and the first woman to lead a democratic government in a Muslim-majority nation. During her terms as Prime Minister, she focused on privatization and women's rights, but faced allegations of corruption and went into self-exile. Bhutto returned to Pakistan in 2007 under a power-sharing deal facilitated by the US and intended to transition the country toward democratic governance after years of military rule under President Pervez Musharraf. She called for civilian control over the military, the curbing of Islamist extremism, and a revival of democracy. In December 2007, after delivering a speech at a rally, Bhutto was shot and then killed in a bombing that also claimed the lives of 23 others. She had previously survived an earlier assassination attempt that killed over 180 people. Her death was claimed by Al-Qaeda, though suspicion also fell on the Pakistani Taliban and rogue factions within Pakistan's intelligence services. Bhutto's return threatened both jihadist networks and authoritarian structures alike. Her assassination caused riots nationwide, leaving dozens dead. Her death further destabilized a fragile nuclear-armed state, raising alarm internationally about Pakistan's security and the growing influence of extremism. Bhutto's assassination also influenced US policy in the region.